Tyler Kirk and Amy Kayaza are associates, and Robert Rosenblum is a partner at Wilson Sons Goodrich. There has apparently been significant shock and surprise over recent reports that the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has issued a large number of subpoenas to initial coin offering ICO issuers and 2 ICO gatekeepers who may have been involved in token transactions that potentially did not comply with the federal securities laws. To a large extent, this shock and surprise is shocking and surprising. The SEC has been as clear as it knows how to be that virtually all tokens, and simple agreements for future tokens, or SAFTs, are securities for purposes of the federal securities laws. It is true that the SEC's initial forays into the crypto space were comparatively gentle. Instead of bringing an enforcement action in the Dow case, the SEC instead opted to issue a report. The SEC also simply told Munchie Inc. to stop its unregistered token offering, and did not bring any further actions against it. Some participants in the crypto community apparently mistook these actions as suggesting that the SEC would continue to be gentle, perhaps by essentially grandfathering pre-existing token sales, regardless of the lack of compliance with the federal securities laws, or by pursuing only the most egregious violations of federal securities laws, such as those involving token issuers engaging in garden variety fraud. That was an unfortunate misreading of the clear signals that the SEC intended to send. Unsubtle hints. The SEC Chairman Jay Clayton's repeated statements that virtually all token offerings are securities, for example, should have been a clear signal to the market about what was likely to happen. The fact that the SEC had created a cryptocurrency task force headed by members of its Division of Enforcement should have been another. The SEC is very clear in those few times when it says it may not fully prosecute prior securities law violations. A good example of how the SEC tends to approach those instances was its recent offer to investment advisors with potential fiduciary duty violations in connection with mutual fund share class selections to voluntarily discuss those violations with the SEC. Obviously, the SEC did not make a comparable offer to participants in the crypto community who may not have complied with the federal securities laws. In any event, the crypto community is now on full notice that the SEC will focus on prior token and SAFT offerings that did not comply with the federal securities laws, and it can generally seek disgorgement and money penalties for such misconduct that occurred within the last 5 years. The SEC also will insist that all token issuers comply with applicable federal securities laws as they develop the platforms and token markets. The good news is that none of this means that cryptocurrencies and platforms cannot operate in the US. They can, but they need to do so in compliance with the federal securities laws, and other applicable laws and regulations. There also should no longer be confusion about what the SEC thinks. The SEC thinks that virtually all tokens are securities, and it thinks that all applicable securities laws, rules and regulations apply to tokens and token platforms. This is, after all, precisely what SEC Chairman Clayton and others of the SEC have been saying. How to respond? A token issuer could, of course, take the SEC a private litigants to court, and it is possible that at least some courts would determine that at least some tokens are not securities in the ordinary case, though the issuer may first have to move through years of expensive litigation with the SEC a private plaintiffs, during which time it may be difficult to fully operate the platform due to litigation risk and market uncertainty. It also is worth considering that many courts may well agree with the SEC's position. Moreover, even if one token issuer is successful in persuading a court that its tokens are not securities, other token issuers may not find much to celebrate. The determination of whether a particular token is a security is likely to be highly fact-specific, so the fact that one token is not a security may not be of much help to tokens with significantly different characteristics. Accordingly, here is what we think are a few key takeaways and observations following the SEC's reported recent actions. Tokens are almost always securities. The SEC will treat virtually all tokens as securities, and token issuers should treat the tokens as securities. Utility token does not mean what you think it means. The SEC believes that tokens that have or will have utility generally are still securities. Legal or other opinions that a token is a utility token, and therefore is not a security, are unlikely to be persuasive to the SEC. A token does not stop being a security when the related platform becomes operational. This is a corollary to the fact that utility tokens often are still securities. Whether or when a token stops being a security is a highly fact-specific question, which likely turns on factors like the continuing degree of involvement of one or more platform sponsors in the token ecosystem and whether the tokens are largely being purchased and held for consumptive purposes or for investment purposes. None of these have any likely correlation to the time a token platform becomes